starts off on a positive note of getting Lamar Jackson back Thursday night, which was great. He threw for 200 yards, did not look rusty at all. He only rushed for 15, but he didn't really need that. Lamar Jackson also threw for 4 touchdowns, 2 of which going to Mark Andrews. So guess who's back and relative again at the tight end position now that Lamar's back? Oh, wait, it's Mark Andrews. No kidding. I mean, the guy just catches touchdowns. It's Lamar's favorite guy in the red zone.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
If Jacoby Brissett was playing bad football for the past 3 weeks, Kyler Murray will be fully healthy, ready to go. Can't wait to get him on the field at Seattle and try to resurrect our season. Now you have Jacoby Brissett playing really good football. Putting Kyler Murray back in right now because he wasn't playing good football doesn't make any sense. The perfect storm here for Arizona. Hey, Kyler, going on IR takes the pressure off you. And Jacoby, you deserve the start. Go ahead and start, kid.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
And the amazing thing you're going to say about Tom Izzo for the jump is, Tom Izzo don't duck anybody. You want to hear who they have to play preseason? Kentucky, Duke, UNC, and Arkansas. This is not the Jimmy Boeheim Don't Leave New York Carrier Dome Classic. This guy plays people.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
We now have to figure out if they will be in the playoffs. They're the Super Bowl favorite and have shorter odds to miss the postseason as you and I sit here right now.
Right, but let me ask you this. Do you feel after this 5-4 record, 9 weeks, 10 weeks of the regular season, that their defense is as dominant as it was last year?
But the offense is better.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Gambling indictments hit baseball, plus an NFL stadium named after Trump. Front Office Sports Today starts now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Front Office Sports Today, your look inside the stories shaping the business and culture of sports. I'm Baker Machado in New York, and this podcast is brought to you by Invesco QQQ. Changing the game has always been our game. Access NASDAQ 100 companies in one ETF, Invesco's Distributors, Inc. Now, coming up on the show, President Trump attended the Commanders game over the weekend. This as he reportedly asked the team to name their new stadium after him. Plus, are the NFL teams investing in good backup quarterbacks? But first, having just rocked the basketball world, sports gambling indictments have now moved to baseball. Let's get to that in today's main event. Well, the Department of Justice indicted Guardians pitchers Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz over the weekend, charging them with fraud, conspiracy, and bribery, claiming that the two players played significant roles in a scheme to rig bets on pitches during Major League Baseball games. So let's bring in sports and entertainment attorney Dan Lust. Dan, great to have you here as always. So tell us a bit more about what the feds are alleging here.
Yeah, I guess you guys have covered the basketball side of this ad nauseum. Baseball's a little bit different, and let's focus on Clase and Ortiz here. We have two pitchers, the allegations dating back to 2023. If you just knew the Rozier stuff at a high level, there's really one game that was focused on by prosecutors. Here, it's really a series of pitches, right? I think for Clase, it's 8 pitches. There's text messages. There's payments that are transferred between one and the other athlete. So in some sense, Baker, these have some similarities, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a basketball player, it's a baseball player, it's 2 actors working together on the baseball side, 2 teammates, in a series of games. And we could talk about the different nature of the bets involved. There is some kind of exotic nature of the bets as opposed to just like general unders over the course of the game. But there are certainly some similarities that we should unpack.
Yeah, let's go into some of that a little bit. And I want you to sort of explain, for those who maybe are unfamiliar with this, the prop bet angle when it comes to pitchers. Because I don't think a lot of people know, I at least didn't know, that you could place wagers. I mean, I know we could place a wager on anything, but placing wagers on pitches. So how does that sort of correlate to the Clase and Ortiz case here?
Hypothetically, I might know something about live pitch markets, but if you go to any type of game, right, and you're just kind of watching the action, you could certainly bet on a baseball game so that people understand money line, the over/under amount of runs scored, right, the spread. People kind of understand those concepts. If a pitcher is going to have 6 strikeouts or if a player is going to hit a home run, I think people understand that. Baseball is very different than football, basketball, and hockey in this regard, because every play, right, the game kind of resets. You have pitcher and batter, and the way that these DraftKings and FanDuel markets work, and obviously other platforms model the same type of markets, you could bet on the outcome of every pitch. Will the next pitch be a fastball? Will it be off speed? Will it be a ball? Will it be in strike? Will it be an out? Will it be a single, a double? You can actually bet every single slice of a baseball game, because think of it, every play stops and those markets reset. So whereas in basketball, post Jonte Porter, you can't really bet any action on the 12th man on the bench. Will he score a basket or not? Because the NBA got ahead of it. Baseball, every time you have a pitcher and you have a batter in the box, you can bet on either of those two players, which certainly creates additional exposure because, certain players are going to be minimum salary guys. Certain players are going to be up, Rule 5 guys that are just playing for a hot cup of coffee with the team. And at least as the way that DraftKings and FanDuel are currently set up, every player has some type of exposure if you are throwing a ball as a pitcher or you're in the box as a batter, which very different than the way the basketball is set up.
Now, we have the union chief, Tony Clark, saying that prop bets need to be banned in this case. We've heard the same thing in the NBA. Even in the NCAA, the president, Charlie Baker, has said that as well. But then the other angle and maybe argument to this would be, from the betting platforms, they'll say, look, the current system is working because they're able to flag this situation and at least get this to authorities. Do you think because of all these high-profile indictments, we're leading to an area where maybe these prop bets might become illegal or regulated in some way?
Yeah, prop bets are the dangerous market, and I, certainly happy to go on record, right? What is, people can say that betting has happened forever, and there's these betting scandals going back, obviously, 100 years. You could talk about the Black Sox, but really what the new thing is how we can catch these at an alarming frequency. Baker, as you said, these bets are being flagged ahead of time. We had an issue with the UFC last week where they ahead of time flagged a suspicious betting pattern. Dana White got the call, and Dana White went to the actual fighter in question and said, are you hurt? Have you told anybody information? So there was an opportunity by, they're the UFC, and we haven't learned this on the baseball side or on the basketball side, whether that information was relayed ahead of time. So, you could say, and yes, maybe player markets, these props are kind of unique and they're being flagged in the technology. But what is interesting, right, for baseball, basketball, football, if you go back pre-legalization, right, the past 10 years, so to speak, we did not really have this type of exotic markets. We had money lines, we had spreads, we had over-unders. You didn't have the ability to bet on a first pitch strike or a ball. So yes, in the one sense, the betting scandals, or betting, schemes and point shaving, that's not new. That's existed for, 10, 20, 50, 100 years, right? And what is new is the technology to catch that. So that part, we certainly can't blame DraftKings for that. But if there is a finger to point at these kind of new age betting markets, it's these exotic props that are offered that have not existed, a la carte before the legalization era at this extent and this type of volume. So if you're Tony Clark and you're saying we have to navigate the amount of props, as I mentioned, right, you can be the NBA and try to limit the amount of exposure to, guys that are minor league guys or 12th man at the end of the bench. And I'm not sure, Baker, to your point, who is begging for live pitch props? Why do we need that? Is that really bringing new customers to the table, or are those customers just betting on everything and they'll find a way to wager their $100, be it on live props or on will so-and-so hit a home run, which obviously is less manipulatable than will a first pitch be a strike? Yeah, good point. Also, what I thought was interesting is each one of the charges here carry a maximum of 20 years in prison. So I think in theory, the maximum that both these guys would face would be 60 years in jail. Do you envision that actually happening? Do you envision them getting the maximum sentence in this case? I mean, on the criminal side, it's tough. I mean, and Clase and Ortiz's lawyer have since kind of come on and they've said that these are lawful transactions, that nothing here kind of says anything to the contrary. I have a hard time seeing that argument, especially in light of the betting irregularities. But at the end of the day, right, I have to say the boring thing that I tell my law students, right, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. The problem is this technology is very new and it's unique, and I'm not sure how you explain away these irregular betting patterns. And different, as I think people should point out, Terry Rozier was accused, and the charges in his NBA indictment really relate to one game. These are, at least for Clase, who's a two-time reliever of the year, three-time All-Star, player that's made, millions upon millions of dollars. They relate to at least, right, 8 different pitches over a period of time backed by text messages and financial transactions. So those are the allegations. And, put it this way, it paints a picture digitally that Pete Rose didn't have, right, that the Black Sox didn't have. So, I don't really think there's a historical precedence to it. And, we'll see. 60 years is a lot. And, no criminal defense attorney expects their client to get the maximum of the charges. But I do think Major League Baseball at some point, or the NBA, or the NFL, or the NHL, or UFC, we'll have to send a message, and we'll see if that message is here, but a message has to be sent at some.
All right, Dan, with the last 90 seconds we got with you, what else are you watching in this case?
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, these are charges that date back the investigation to 2023. So I think at that time, the world didn't really know the advancement of these technologies, that you could catch really any type of suspicious betting pattern. Baker, let's say you're betting like $100 a game. If all of a sudden you start to bet $1,000 a game, you go 10x what your normal bet is. And every time you're doing it, you're betting it on a manual Class A pitches, right? That is a regular betting pattern. And if there are 10 Bakers and 10 of them are doing it, even if the amount of money is in the thousands, if you're outside your normal bands of betting markets and you're going a little bit higher, and every time it's on the same player, that's suspicious. So those type of activities compound. And I'm just looking for more players that might not have known this in 23, in 24, and now that comes out in 25. So yeah, I don't think we're going to see that much moving, new betting stories, but I'm curious of this window between 2018 and 2025, what else can come out?
Yeah, I just think it's so interesting that I feel like we're having all of these betting stories happening all at once. It feels like now. They're all happening right now.
I can't be surprised by that. We have a president of our country and the FBI director that seems to make this a point. So, yeah, I sense we're going to get more, but I do think this activity will be looking backwards as opposed to forward. I think players have finally got this message that no matter the extent, if it's irregular, it will be flagged, and it will be flagged ahead of time.
Yeah, good point. Entertainment and sports attorney Dan Luss. Dan, thank you so much as always. We got a lot more Front Office Sports today headed your way right after this quick break.
Sauce Gardner heading over to the Indianapolis Colts as they go all in on this season and beyond. As I think a lot of people have been noting, that move does not just say, hey, we like what we have this year. It says we like what we have moving forward, and that includes Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback for Dallas. What does that decision to bring in Quinnen Williams say? That means they're poorly ran, but we already knew that.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They didn't panic. They played like a championship team. They came back and destroyed them, probably cost Brian Kelly his job at least a week earlier than it might have happened before. But the fact is they are playing great. But like I say, I like the talent level of all those teams. And I think if you want to have a little bang for your buck and play around with a team that could slide in, Ole Miss might be that team.
The Bowden Blitz. Only on SportsGrid.
Governor calls you out in the football state, you're out.
And it was so funny, too, because after he fired Kelly on Sunday, right, Woodward released a statement that said that, in effect, that he was still in charge of the athletic department. Well, you didn't check with the governor because apparently he had other plans for the athletic department, and you're not in them.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Football contest season is back, and so is the Las Vegas Football Contest Show. Season 2, the sharpest football contest show in the land. Focusing on all 3 Circus Sports contests and the Westgate Superbook Super Contest, we handicap the games and release our contest picks every week of the season. Featuring Super Contest champions Brady Cannon, James Salinas, and former NFL player Mike Pritchard, all team will have you prepared this season like none other. Check us out every weekend right here on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today. I'm Baker Machado, and this podcast is brought to you by Invesco QQQ. In football, changing the game begins with rethinking it, like rethinking how players work on their game. And with wearable tech, advanced analytics, AI, and more, the same innovative thinking that changes the game could also change your portfolio. Invesco QQQ gives you access to the innovators who are rethinking the world. Let's rethink possibility. Well, the White House has been in communication with the Washington Commanders to express President Trump's desire to have the team's new $3.7 billion stadium named after him. This all according to ESPN's Don Van Natta and Adam Schefter. And the new stadium is being built on the old RFK Stadium site that served as the team's home until 1996. So how likely is the president's request to actually happen? Well, let's bring in FOS reporter Eric Fisher. So Eric, tell us more about the president's request here.
So, he wants to make it a lot about himself, and he thinks that he had a prime role in making this happen, which he really didn't. But it's very much about sort of self-glorification in his case, and he's put it out there. I've been in contact with the White House myself, and they've told me the same thing, that basically they think this is a great idea and ought to be in recognition of what he did to make this thing happen.
So I guess the bigger question is, and the president has sort of invoked Josh Harris, the owner of the Commanders, and he did over the weekend, as a great owner. Does Josh Harris have the authority to be able to do this?
Yeah, so the way the deal worked between the team and the city, and it's important to remember what happened in the final days of Joe Biden's term, is that the federally owned land on which this project is going to happen, that control went from the federal government to the D.C. government. The D.C. government, during the course of this spring and summer, then made a deal with the team to actually do the stadium and the mixed-use development. And in that master deal, which has about 70% private money and about 30% of DC money, the control over the naming rights does lie with the team, and that's pretty standard in these kind of public-private partnerships, that critical revenue stream remains with the team.
Eric, how do stadiums get named after someone? Because I feel like a lot of the times they're named after sponsorships or corporate entities.
Yeah, this is a critical revenue stream, and in the case of the NFL, we're talking at least 8 figures in value, 10 million minimum, and the top of the market in cases like Las Vegas and Los Angeles, it's north of 20 million, and so this is a fundamental revenue stream. And the team, even though they haven't commented in this particular instance relative to the president, they've made it very clear during the whole deal development process with the District of Columbia that they want to sell these naming rights like any other NFL team in this situation would.
But I also think a lot of these stadium names, if they are named after someone, I think it's mostly posthumously, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And there's a variety of, split the baby kind of scenarios where you could have, person field at XYZ stadium and combine 2 monikers in some sort of fashion like that. But again, that's usually if a person is being recognized, that you are correct. It's usually some sort of posthumous honor and not something sort of pre-negotiated while the person's alive.
Eric, with the last little bit of time we have left with you, the president in the past had said that he maybe would have held up funding for the Commanders if they didn't change their name back to their old name. Is it possible that the president could hold up the stadium again based on this?
Yeah, we got into this a little bit during the summer, during the original funding debate, and there are some regulatory steps where the federal government is involved, particularly as it relates to design planning and so forth. But this is really fundamentally a local issue, and the federal government's power in this whole situation is more limited than what the president has suggested.
Front Office Sports reporter Eric Fisher. Good stuff as always, Eric. Thank you so much. Meanwhile, President Trump became the very first sitting president in nearly half a century to attend a regular season NFL game. He attended, of course, the Washington Commanders' loss to the Detroit Lions on Sunday. So for more, let's bring in our Front Office Sports media reporter and, of course, author of the Tuned In newsletter, Mike McCarthy. Mike, good to see you as always. So how did the president's visit come to be here?
Well, I think the president has been talking to the Commanders, obviously, about this new domed stadium, $3.7 billion. So there's a lot of back and forth, obviously, between the White House and the Commanders already. And this was a perfect opportunity. It was Veterans Day weekend, and the president could go on the air and swear in some new military members. So, he's a natural showman, and it was perfect for him.
Yeah, and it was interesting his sort of conversation with Kenny Albert, who we've had on this show many times. We love him very much, and Jonathan Vilma. He really sort of took control of that conversation in the booth.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, look, there's nobody a bigger Kenny Albert fan than me, but the interview was a warm bath, let's face it. They had 8.5 minutes to ask him, a single meaningful question, and they really didn't do it. The story going into the interview was Trump wants the Commanders' new stadium named after him. Big story in ESPN, right? Why not ask him about it? You had the guy, he actually brought up the Commanders himself. Or what about Bad Bunny, Baker? Trump is on the record as saying he's opposed to Bad Bunny being the halftime performer at the Super Bowl. Ask him about Bad Bunny. Instead, they're asking about, Tom Brady and Drew Brees. And, look, I don't want these guys to be Sam Donaldson 60 Minutes here, but, you had the opportunity, take it.
No, so good point. I mean, they were talking about him playing tight end when he was like in high school and stuff like that. And that's a very good point.
Thanks for the massage. Thanks for the memory lane. But maybe if you got a president of the United States on the air for 8.5 minutes, which as a TV professional is an eternity.
True.
You could ask him one solid question that he would be expecting that he could make some news.
That's a very, very good point, Mike. We know other presidents, former President Barack Obama, others have been very big sports fans as well. But it seems like this president really is relishing going to a lot of these sporting events. Obviously, the Daytona 500. He was just at the U.S. Open.
Super Bowl.
The Super Bowl, the Ryder Cup as well. And obviously, with the World Cup coming here to the United States next year, the president really sort of relishing this moment of being the sports president.
Yeah, he really does. And I don't think he's faking it. I've covered Trump for decades, way before he ran for president. And his story is linked to sports inextricably. He was promoting boxing back in the 80s, and he owned a USFL team. He was behind the USFL's lawsuit against the NFL. He tried to buy the Bills.
I was going to say, Stephen A. Smith told us he wanted to buy the Bills, right?
So, and then you look at him now with his close ties with Dana White, UFC, WWE. I think Trump is a genuine sports fan. I think he loves sports. I think he considers himself to be an athlete. He has that kind of winner and losing mentality. He doesn't like to lose. He's a fierce competitor. And I think he also is smart enough as a politician to see that his MAGA base is really into sports. So this is just a direct pipeline into them.
Yeah, very good point. Of course, you can sign up for Mike's tuned-in newsletter over at frontofficesports.com. Mike McCarthy, good stuff as always. And coming up next, everyone, are NFL teams investing enough in backup quarterbacks? We got that story next.
We now have to figure out if they will be in the playoffs. They're the Super Bowl favorite and have shorter odds to miss the postseason as you and I sit here right now.
Right, but let me ask you this. Do you feel after this 5-4 record, 9 weeks, 10 weeks of the regular season, that their defense is as dominant as it was last year?
No, but the offense is better.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Fly Pelican, more like grounded Pelican. The Pelicans are 0-6 to start the season. Their main guys aren't their main guys. And it comes to a point where, what do you do if you are Joe Dumars and the leadership of New Orleans?
Pro Basketball Today, only on SportsGrid.
You want to throw $12, $13 million at Kiffin? That's always a possibility. Summerall, they lost the other night to, in that matchup to UTSA. Or do you go back to potentially the mad scientist and Nick Saban, give him, complete control of the athletic department and see if he can turn it around? We'll see. But whatever they go, they're going to need a coach to hit the ground running.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
His daughter, she's on the OF.
Okay.
She's on the OF.
Is
now.
that right?
Yeah, she's on the OF.
So he's got
now.
an OnlyFans daughter and a little son
who says he can beat Curry and LeBron.
And he's coaching a team that was down 72 to
Keep
nothing.
that dude away from polite society.
Okay, by the way, I'm with you. I didn't know any of that is.
Newman's pops gotta go.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today. Baker Machado here in New York City. And don't look now, but 2 of the top 3 teams in the AFC didn't even make the playoffs last year. Plus, how important is investing in a backup quarterback? Let's bring in Christian Ponder, former NFL quarterback and also the founder and CEO of The Post, which, of course, is a private membership network connecting athletes turned business leaders. Christian, great to have you here. Before we get into some other NFL headlines, I want to talk about the big news that just happened today. The New York Giants relieving head coach Brian Daboll of his duties today. Just your initial thoughts on that, and then what is it like maybe going through a season and having maybe some changes with the head coaches? What does that do for a team?
Yeah, it's not easy. I think some players will probably take it personally that, hey, like I I contributed to this happening. No one ever wants to see anyone get fired. But there's also some excitement, right? Like, I think, look, if you look at Coach J-Ball, he's an offensive guy. Offense has not performed that well since he got here. Obviously, we saw some flashes of Jackson Dart, and there was some hope, and that's why actually somewhat surprised that it happened today. But we'll see.
You know, you bring up a really interesting point because I feel like a lot of these quarterbacks that get drafted, Jackson Dart obviously, and Bo Nix, the exceptions to the rule, but a lot of these guys that get drafted, it doesn't seem like they have infrastructure in place. You know, I'm thinking Caleb Williams when you have Eberflus, a defensive-oriented guy. You have, Penix, and you had a defensive-oriented guy. Do you feel like when teams are drafting quarterbacks, they don't really have the infrastructure to make those quarterbacks really succeed?
Yeah, look, it's hard, right? The leash is so short for rookie quarterbacks now. Mm-hmm. The expectations are you need to prove yourself really in the first 2 years, and if you don't, we're going to find someone else. And I think if you look at, I can't remember what the statistic was. It was like after Matthew Stafford up until maybe it was like 2018 or something, there was 25 quarterbacks drafted first round, and like 2 of the 25 were still on the same team that they were on. And I think because the expectations are so high and you have to prove yourself so quickly, and there's not a lot of guys that can do that.
Do you feel like teams are investing enough in backup quarterbacks just because of the high risk of injuries for so many starters out there that teams are maybe not prepared?
It feels like it's become more common, right? That there have been, and I think it's the change. It has to do with the development of how quarterbacks are playing the game, right? Like more, I think the Tom Brady quarterbacks who are stoic in the pocket, like that's non-existent. Everyone has to be somewhat of a dual threat quarterback. So these guys are running more, so they're going to be prone to more injuries. And I still think up until probably now, it's still been an afterthought. No, I don't think teams have thought that much around who their backup quarterback is. I think you look probably at a ton of teams, and they don't have a tremendous second option. But if you look at like some of these teams like the 49ers, who had a former first-round draft pick happen to be their backup quarterback, and Mac Jones is playing pretty well. Look, I don't know how you account for that.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk obviously about Florida State, your school. You had a terrific career there. It has not been the best of years for school right now. I'm sure it's really hard to watch that as a former Seminole. What has happened with that university or with that school this year, and also what happens with Mike Norvell at the end of the year? Yeah,
good question. Number one, I have no idea what's going to happen to Coach Norvell. I think obviously he had a tremendous year 2 years ago when they went undefeated and made the Orange Bowl and obviously had some injuries and that didn't work out as well, missed the playoffs. But I think generally just it's a testament to the situation of college sports in general. Like the transfer portal has such an impact on the roster every year, and the turnover is so tremendously high. So you look at a team that went 13-0 in the regular season, probably lost more than half of their players either the NFL or the transfer portal, and you have a new team every year, and just how hard that is to coach.
The parity now where it's 2 super conferences, SEC and Big Ten, and now you have the ACC and the Big 12 is sort of now these outsider conferences. Does a school like Florida State have to now be in a conference like the SEC to be able to compete at the top level? How much longer do they stay in a place like the ACC? Or what's your thoughts on that?
Look, I think they should stay in the ACC because if we can't win the ACC, we're going to have a really hard time winning in the SEC.
Just as UCLA going to the Big Ten, it's been a disaster. You got to win the recruiting game, and I think you've got to recruit high schoolers. You got to recruit for guys that are at Florida State for the long term, and you can't just keep building your roster every year with the transfer portal. I think the transfer portal has got to be a solution to a problem that you can't solve immediately with some new recruit that you brought in high school. But I think it feels like we've prioritized the transfer portal, and that makes it tough. But I think, look, I think I would like to see them stay in the ACC. Again, it'd be really hard to go succeed in the SEC or the Big Ten when compared to how we should be able to compete in the ACC. But yeah, if you look at football-wise, the ACC is not. It's been Georgia Tech was our in Miami, and they've obviously fumbled over the last couple of weeks. So it's tough. It's tough to see Florida State in this position. They should be able to recruit. It's such a historic program. Especially in the state of Florida. Guys want to go play there. So we'll see how it plays out. Christian Ponder, great to have you here. Thank you so very much for joining us, of course, former NFL quarterback and founder and CEO of The Post. And thanks so much for you at home for watching us here on Front Office Sports Today. We'll be back with more tomorrow.